For our latest podcast this evening, it's a great pleasure to have Nicola. And Nicola was the 2018 ladies winner in a time of 17 hours, 55 and 41. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Just first of all, how are you feeling just over a week after the race?
All right, actually.
Yeah.
I think recovery is not too bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you've run since?
Yes, I ran last Friday for the first time. I think maybe just 4 miles.
Okay.
And then yesterday I had a run as well. So.
Right. And how are the legs feeling?
They were fine on Friday and they felt a little bit sluggish yesterday, but
Okay.
I'm sure they'll recover.
Yeah, Excellent. Well, we'll find out a bit more about what your plans are for the rest of the year. But I just wanted to go back. Obviously, there'll be a good number of people who know who you are, and but there'll be some who don't. So if you could just introduce yourself, non-running wise, just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I'm Nicola. I'm from the East Coast originally, but settled on the West Coast after going to university through here and then meeting my husband. I have been running, I'd say. I used to run when I was younger, since about 2008 or 2010, but not doing ultras until later. I have an average job in financial services. Wouldn't say any more than that. I have no idea who might listen. And yeah, just my husband and I. Yeah. Plenty of nieces and nephews, but no kids of our own.
Right. And I was looking at your power of 10 and the stats, and the first record I can see of you running was in 2010 when you ran the Glasgow University 5 miler. Would that be the first race, or
that's probably right, because that I think is when I joined Gar Scoob, would be about then.
Yeah. And what attracted you to running and to join a club?
Well, I used to run when I was younger, and I ran up until probably about 17, and then kind of drifted away from it. But I always still had in my head, I always thought of myself as a runner, even though I sort of stopped doing it, and I thought eventually I'll get back to it, and then I did, I guess, in my late 20s probably, and then eventually little bits here and there, then eventually thought, right, I just should join a club and then that'll get me running again. So I joined Garth.
So at 17, were you a good runner? Would you see yourself as representing the county or the school? Or?
Yeah, I think I was okay.
You're being modest there.
I used to run for Edinburgh Athletic, and I did the district championships and that kind of thing, and ran abroad. We did British League stuff. And I always did okay in Scottish schools, which is quite a big competition, but I always seemed to be kind of fourth.
Right.
And never quite getting on the podium.
But there was hundreds after you, though.
But it was totally different than doing ultras. I used to do sprints and hurdles were really the two things I used to do. Right. So quite different. Maybe not the hurdles bit, that might come into it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, obviously this podcast is about the West Highland Way Race particularly and ultra running. So again, I've looked at the DUV stats. Have you seen this website?
I have actually.
I
found it last year. It's a good site.
Yeah, it's got. Well, I don't know. It's got every race, but it's got loads. So the first ultra I've got you down as 2013, the Glenorgle 33. So would that be your first ultra?
Yes.
Yeah. So what attracted you to ultras then?
I have, I'm not sure. I don't know actually, and I remember doing the Glenorgle, and it's funny because in my head I never really approached it thinking it was an ultra. I think I approached that thinking it was a trail race, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking of it in the sense of an ultra, but I guess it certainly is. I just fancied doing something that was off-road. Although it's not as off-road as I thought it might have been.
Yeah, it's a bit more road, isn't it?
Yeah. Which actually was quite good. Yeah. But and I wanted to do something off-road because I enjoyed running off-road. Nothing more than that. And then from there, the ultra piece, it's a bit like just pushing yourself to that next step, because I must admit, I think when I started back running, it was like a 5 or 10k, and so I did that race and I thought, well, next thing's a half marathon, so I think the next race is probably a half marathon, and then after that I thought, well, the next race is a marathon. Not really thinking that you can do the same thing. So I think from there, that's probably how it got to ultra in the first instance, was just that, I'll run that far, I'll go to the next step.
And then being in Glasgow, obviously you got Debbie and Marco and a few others. So did they encourage you to take part, or?
I would probably say the first time I was aware of Debbie at Glasgow and the fact that she was doing some 100-mile or something didn't encourage me at all. I just thought it was something completely alien. It just didn't seem like anything I would ever get involved in, or it just seems like some crazy person doing some crazy distance that was just on a different planet. So I wouldn't say that was the thing, but then certainly the one thing you have an advantage of people like Marco and Debbie being around and being in the same club is you can kind of I guess you get an awareness of something that you might not otherwise have had the exposure to, so it becomes a bit more normal over time. And then from then on, you basically your three favourite races seem to be, or certainly the Glenelg you've done twice, the Highland West Highland Way you've done twice now, the Fling you've done the last 5 years, and the Devil of the Highlands you've done 4 years. So obviously races on the West Highland Way have become very special to you, have they? Yeah, I think the fact is that they're local. So there's no logistics to think about. There's no expense. You can, it's straightforward. But also, they're just so very well organised. They really are special from that perspective. And I've done lots of other races that are not ultra, and some of them are well organised. But nothing has that kind of feel for the finish of the Fling or just the overall kind of atmosphere doing the West Highland Way. And so I like it, and I quite like the terrain. I quite like the Fling. I think quite suits me because you can get a bit of pace. It's not there's not a lot of climbing in any of these. They're fairly fast, and I quite like the runability. And your times in 2014, you took 9:49, which is. A lot of people would love to get under 10 hours, but then over the next 4 years, you got faster and faster. And so in 2017, you were 8 hours 16. So is that something which surprised you, that you got, almost an hour and a half faster from the first one? Or did you always think it's there? No, because I think generally my overall fitness was there. I think if, in any race length, my time would have been getting improved then, because I just got back into running and doing a bit more. Plus, you get a bit more experience, a bit more confident about what you can do. The first time I went out to run the Fling, I was just thinking, will I get to the end? So,
and that was the longest you ran, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very first time I even did Glenelg, I remember again thinking, will I get to the end? And not knowing what the terrain would be like, and thinking, is there going to be some massive mountain around the corner that I've got to climb? And then I always remember as well, in the early part of it, you are on trail and there is a little bit of a hill, but it's not what you would call a big hill. But everybody around me was walking, so I kind of thought, well, I better walk. I was too self-conscious to run. So I think there's things like that once you've done it once, you think, well, actually, I know that I could run that now and still get to the end. So you take a little bit of that every year. And then in 2016, you did the West Highland Way for the first time. So again, that was your longest run, was it? Yes.
And you finished that in 19 hours 45.
Yes.
So can you think back, that was in 2016?
It was awful.
It
was awful. It was it was really not a good race. I felt terrible from start until not quite finish, actually. I seemed to pick up at Kinloch leaving, because by that point I was just, I think it had been so tough that I just sort of almost let go of the pressure, if you like, and just went for it. But I do remember at one point running, I must have been running, I can't recall exactly where I was, but I've been running on my own for quite a while, and I remember thinking all of a sudden, am I last? Like, I just, that way where I must have just zoned out and thought, I've not seen anybody for ages, am I at the very back? Just thinking, feeling quite lonely.
Well, running 19 hours 45, you wouldn't be at the back, no. And then that next year, 2017, you didn't do the West Highland Way, but you had a great Fling in 8:16, and then a great Devils in 9:28.
I did do the West Highland Way, but I DNF'd. I chucked it at Glencoe.
Okay.
Just another really similar to 2016. Just really sick. Not having, I wasn't eating in 2016. Exactly the same thing in 2017. just a really bad race, and I got to the point where I walked from I think almost Victoria Bridge. I tried to have something to eat at Victoria Bridge, and then about 2 minutes later was sick again, and I thought I'll walk, and then just didn't get started, and I got to Glencoe and thought I'm not walking all the way to the finish. So I chucked it.
Okay.
And that was okay though.
Yeah.
It was, I was all right. People, I think, were really, are you all right about not finishing? I was perfectly fine about not finishing.
Do you think the fact that you'd had a finish, did that make it easier to feel it was right to stop?
Possibly. I think I just had enough and thought, I'm really, really not enjoying this, and I don't want to continue doing something that I'm really not enjoying. Yeah.
So was it a big decision to come back this year then?
No, it definitely felt like unfinished business. Yeah. I definitely felt that, I won the Fling, I won the Devils, and I thought I wanted when I was set out, I'll make no bones about it, to win in 2016. That was the aim, and my my time was so far off what I was targeting. It didn't happen in 2017, so I thought this year, right, okay, I really felt like I have to just get that box ticked and then I can relax a little. Yeah.
Well, obviously I want to spend quite a bit of time on this year's race, but just one comment on the Fling and the West Highland Way. In 2016 you did a really fast Fling, 8:36, and then your West Highland Way was 19:45. This year your Fling was slower, 9:04, and then the West Highland Way was 17:55. So was that deliberate or?
No, it wasn't. I had a really bad Fling run this year, and it may have helped with the West Highland Way. But who knows? A few people have said that. Although the one thing I would say about it is my legs and overall state after this year's Fling felt a lot worse than they did last year running 8:16, because 8:16 felt everything was comfortable. It was fast. It was start to finish. I felt pretty strong, whereas this year from the get-go my legs felt terrible, and I just felt like I couldn't get any pace. I just didn't have the energy. I had a bad sort of virally cold for a couple of weeks at the beginning of April. My heart rate was right up until a couple of days before the Fling, so these things might have paid into it a little. But also I started at the end of last year training with Paul Giblin, and last year I had really the whole year struggled with Achilles injuries, and I know I ran some good times, but every run was pretty miserable during training. So I spent the winter scaling back mileage massively, losing a lot of fitness, but getting on top of my injury. So I don't know whether it's just also taking me a little bit longer to get into my stride this season than maybe it would have done.
Okay. And then between the Fling and the West Highland Way, what was that 8 weeks like training wise?
So recovery after the Fling, a bit of downtime, and then I guess gradually probably stepping things up towards the West Highland Way, but again not massively. Like my mileage overall, general training, time that I'm spending training is down an awful lot than it has been in previous years.
But you think it's more quality maybe?
Probably, as well. It is, because I think I did everything at one pace before, and now there's a bit more structure.
And certainly, I would imagine someone like Paul would be very structured in the sense of having different sessions that are going to improve different parts of your running. And I used to do some of that as well in some of the sessions with Gar Scoop, but as I say, last year, because I had Achilles injuries, it was really, everything was slow. I walked every hill in training. In fact, interestingly though as well, the sort of nearly 5 weeks before the Fling last year, I basically didn't run anything more than kind of a 4 or 5 mile easy run, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. I think I had one weekend with a long run in it, but there was an awful lot of walking, just because my injuries were flaring up. So that might have been good for the rest of the legs. The thing is, as well, Nicola, running is supposed to be fun, isn't it? And I think when you've got an injury, and it takes the fun out of it, doesn't it? I don't know, you find, if you're running with an injury, in the end, it just becomes it takes the fun out of it, doesn't it?
It was miserable. So that's been the best thing I think about thus far about having gone with Paul has been somebody that's sort of forced me to take a step back, because I think undoubtedly what I would have tried to do is just continue the slogging, probably try and fit a winter like a Glen Oglen in the middle of it and run through, and I would still be running just now with a lot of pain, which is.
But that's all gone now.
I'd say I'm managing it, but it's there in the background, but I'm exercising and doing work on it pretty much every day, and if not every day, every other day, and I can run up hills and it's fine. But as I pick up the intensity, I also pick up managing it and making sure that I'm on top of it.
Okay.
So I'm never going to get complacent about it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's think back to the Friday afternoon then, before the race. Did you have a definite plan? Did you have splits that you were working towards? What was your goal?
So I had a race plan, and the race plan was really quite simple. The race plan on paper was start, run, be flexible, the end.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I did.
Wow.
And
wow.
I don't tend to run to splits. I did get splits for the fling this year, but I only checked the first split when I got to Drimmen, and it wouldn't have made any difference because I already knew that I was struggling, and I was off the split, and I thought, well, I'm not going to bother looking again. I don't tend to look at my watch. In fact, I generally never. I had no idea I'd run under 18 hours this year until literally running into the sports centre. Somebody was applauding and saying, "Oh yeah, and sub 18." I was thinking, "Oh right, okay." I didn't know.
Wow.
So, and I just think for me, I'm running the best that I can at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So the time will be what it will be.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm running. Yeah, as hard as I can.
Yeah, I love the fact, Nicola, that everyone, people can run it in different ways. You've got, people like myself who love to have all our splits and mini splits, and I would know within an inch of its life, what I'm after. Whereas someone like yourself can enjoy it just as much and run a totally different way, which makes what I'd like to do is look at some of your splits, if you don't mind, because it's in retrospect in a sense. But it's been really interesting just looking at the way you paced it. So let's think about the start then, and we'll look from Mulgai to say Rowadennen. So at Balmaha after 19 miles. In fact, someone said in the podcast that I interviewed David McClure last week, and I didn't give the distances, and they thought it might be quite helpful. So just to give listeners a sense of where we are. So Balmaha is 19 miles, and it took you 3 hours 12. And you were
slow.
No, but you were 42nd in the field. Now, bear in mind that you finished 7th. Okay, so you were 42nd after the first split we've got, and then at Rowadennen it took you 1 hour 31, and you were up to 34th, so you'd overtaken 6 people. So just give us a sense. You said you were struggling a little bit to Drimmen. Just give us a sense of how did it go up to Rowadennen?
I was pretty miserable up until Rowadennen. I thought I would try again this year to have some real food, and running, I guess, before, I had something to eat probably around about the beech tree. I think I had a little bit of a flapjack thing. It tasted quite nice. It went over quite easy. I thought, happy days. This is good. This is the first. Yeah. Because I've often not even managed that. And then probably within about 10 minutes, just started to have digestion issues. And I think for me, it's the 1 a.m. start. Everybody's different about how their body reacts, but I'm not used to digesting food at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Yeah. That's just, it's not happening. It doesn't I don't like it. So I said my race plan was, okay, the next thing is you run, be flexible, and the be flexible was about eating. I pretty much there and then scratched the idea of eating food, despite having a shop load in a car, and switched to gels.
Wow.
When I got into Balmaha, I think I had a spoon of rice pudding. I think I had a spoon of rice pudding at Rowadennen, and I think I had a spoon of a pasta thing, maybe Benglath or Oxfordshire, I can't recall. Other than that, I did gels the whole way. It was pretty disgusting, but I can stomach them. So
right, okay.
So yeah, I think that slowed me down. I had some tummy issues in the way into Rowadennen.
Okay, so you didn't purposely set out to get to Balmaha in 3 hours 12.
No.
If you hadn't have had the stomach issues, you probably would have been there faster.
I would have been there a bit quicker, yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have set out to run hard.
Okay.
I mean, what I will say is, and I'm sure these people know who they are. I don't know who they are personally, but as ever, you're running in the first 5, 6, even 10 miles, and I've got people passing me who are profusely sweating.
I'm breathing very hard. Yeah.
Breathing really hard. Yeah. And you're just thinking, crikey.
I'll see you later.
I ain't ever going to switch to doing that. But run a bit faster, it's just, I was definitely slowed by some stomach issues.
And then from Balmaha to Rowadenan, did the stomach issues ease off, and did you get going?
No, I felt still a bit ropey. I got into Rowadenan, I didn't feel great. Couple of people, Graham Conley, Davy Gow, mentioned, I think somebody said, look, circadian rhythm, don't worry about it, everybody feels crap at this time. And actually, it's such an obvious thing, but that kind of did buoy me a little bit. That I thought, well, just calm, just be rational. It is the middle of the night. It doesn't agree with you, it's probably not agreeing with others. And then somewhere beyond that, I started to feel a bit better.
Okay. And then at Rowadenan, did your team meet you there?
Yes, they did. They did.
For more gels?
Well, they had a cup of tea, but they didn't have any milk. So, but I tried a little bit of tea, and that was enough to be able to tell them that come Benglass, I wouldn't mind another cup of tea, but this time perhaps with a little bit of milk.
Okay.
So.
And are you that polite?
Well, actually, they said this year that I was. They could tell that I was trying a lot harder because I think last year and in 2016 it was probably a different case. I wasn't rude. It's just I didn't. I was miserable. Yeah.
You're a lot happier this time.
I was trying to be happier for the crew.
Okay, and then from Rowadenan to Otataya, you did that section in 3 hours 1. So that was the 19th fastest for that split, which meant that you were 24th when you got to Benglass. So you'd overtaken 10 people between. Now, did it feel as though you went past that many, or?
No, actually, I felt on certainly on the log side, I felt quite a few people passing me. I felt quite good getting into Inversnaid. In fact, I felt really light and just generally awake, so and I was quite enjoying the run, but I definitely felt actually that there was a lot of people passing me, not being sexist, but a lot of gents passing me from Inversnaid to Benglass. Again, people that I had passed already, that I felt, we're just getting maybe a little bit overexcited about their agility on the rocks, shall we say, leaping and bounding, a bit like the sort of heavy breathing and maybe just pushing on a little bit too hard. I know that because I passed them all again at Benglass. Right. So, but they seem to enjoy themselves at the time, so fair play.
And sometimes, obviously, these splits don't take into account how long people stop for. So it might be that someone stopped longer at Inversnaid, for example. And so you went past them, and then I say if they worked hard to get past you, and then you passed them again.
I could do that.
But you were moving well, and you're happy when you got to Benglass?
By the time I got to Benglass, I felt really tired again. Actually, you know what it's like. It's kind of ebbs and flows. So, and then I got to Benglass, and I think there was another cup of tea, but there was still no milk. So that's kind of the running joke this year. I think the milk. Last year or the year before, it was the head torch. I had left a note saying the only thing I need to do at Balmaha is take my head torch. The only thing we didn't do at Balmaha was take my head torch. And then at Rowadenan, when I said my head torch is in my back, my crew tried to tell me that one of the other crew had taken it, and I had to pull it out and say, no, it's here. So that was the head torch this year. It was the year of the milk and the tea.
So that's interesting again, because from Benglass to Otataya, I say you were 1 hour 46. Okay, which is a fast time for that section, and you moved up to 20th. But the thing which is interesting, you were third fastest of the whole field from Benglass to Otataya. Which means that only people like David McClure and the Thomas guy were faster than you. So that's interesting. You were saying you felt as though went a little bit of a low after Benglass. But your time is... It's
funny actually, because I do remember thinking, and this comes down to a little bit about your experience that you take and you move on and a bit of confidence. I do remember thinking on that section, the first part of that section towards what I call towards the Crean Larrick Gate, a few times thinking, I think I'm running a bit too slow. So it's interesting that maybe that's, I didn't feel like I was pushing that section at all.
Yeah. But again, it's interesting because the people behind you are probably struggling more than you are, or certainly starting to slow as well. So the whole field is slow.
Yeah.
And so when you got, we'll call Ultratire halfway, even though it's 51 miles, so it's more than halfway. But you were 20th position there, and I say you finished on 7th. And this was the interesting thing when I was looking at those two halves, as it were. That and I was looking at the average pace, and your average pace, you were 16 seconds a mile slower for the second half of the race. But that was the best of anybody. There's two guys who had a really tough first half, and they did a negative split, as it were. Their pace increased, but mainly because they both finished in 22 hours and just under 24. So they were behind you. But those are at your level around you. Nobody ran the second half pace-wise as close to the first half as you did. And that's what I found quite interesting, the way that you were able to pace it. And that next section to Bridge of Orkney, you were the fastest of the whole field. So it took you 1 hour 34 and 43 seconds. You moved up to 13th position. And you got to Bridge of Orkney, which is 59 miles, in 11 hours 06. And so that section, that leg, you were the fastest of the whole field.
Again, that's not anything. The only time I felt like I was running, like picking up a pace, would have been descending into Kinlochleven and then leaving Lindavra. The rest of it, I thought I was probably running a bit too conservatively, with the exception of some parts at the start where I felt like the pace was dictated by stomach issues. But it didn't feel. It's interesting. Yeah,
and again, it's I think subjectively you can say how you felt, but it's quite interesting looking at in comparison to the rest of the field. Even because when I interviewed David last week, he said after Ultratire he did go through a bit of there was bits where he was walking which he'd planned to run.
Yeah.
And so he was slowing, and he was slowing down more than you were slowing down.
Yeah.
So sections like that, you were faster than him. So again, it just.
Well, I think if I'm really honest here, and if my crew are listening, that might be something to do with the fact that there was milk at Ultratire.
Okay. Right.
So the cup of tea had milk in it. Finally.
Yeah. Just think what you would have done if that milk all the way.
I was at one point, I think it was Rowden, and I recall, offered banana milk with the tea, which I declined. But when they eventually got it together and they got the milk, it was obviously see what can happen.
And it's hard to know, isn't it? Because that first section that you had some stomach issues, maybe because of that you were able to maintain your pace. Whereas if that stomach had been, your stomach had been okay, who knows? It could have been that by the time you got to Ultratire you were slowing down like others were. Who knows?
I know. I think it's all. I think you just have. You have to run your own race for that moment. I think is the most important thing, and that changes. Certainly. People have spoken about my pacing before, and I think when I ran the 8:30 odd in the fling, again, probably very similar pacing to the West Highland Way, but then the following year when I ran 8:16, I had a much harder first half and felt a lot less strength in the second half, and yet overall my time was faster. I guess I'm in some ways a bit of a lazy runner. And one of the coaches at Garscoob, Robert Cuthbertson, I think has reprimanded me on this in the past. He once told me that a negative split in a marathon is all well and good, but I can't just run slow in the first half to get it. And I think sometimes I'm a little bit apprehensive about putting myself on the line too early on. But I have got better at that, and every time I have done it of late, I tend to get a better result. But I usually need that confidence boost, like maybe the West Highland Way this year is the confidence to maybe push a little bit if I do it again.
Well, I know there's people like Nick Williamson who basically he based his splits on your fling time, because he thought you were someone who paced it really well. And so he's got his splits here that were on Facebook, and he finished just over 19 hours, 19:01. And he just felt the way you paced the fling was exactly where he wanted to be at Tyndrum. So we used your splits for his pacing and really helped him.
Okay.
So that's quite interesting.
Glad I could be of help.
Yeah, that's right. So again, by the time you got to Glencoe, you were in 11th place overall, and that split took you 2 hours 3 minutes, and again that was the third fastest of the group.
Yeah, that
was a good section?
No, it wasn't a good section actually, because usually I find I do run quite well across Rannoch, and I seem to pass a lot of people, and I always feel steady and strong, but I felt a little bit sluggish this year going over. Yeah.
So with that split of just over 2 hours from Bridge of Orchy to Glencoe, would that be what you'd expect? Have you done that in training?
Yeah, I think in training runs I probably run that anywhere between kind of 1:50, 1:45, 1:50, and maybe 2 hours. I don't tend to run that fast in training when I'm doing a long run. Okay. I tend to just think about the long run as being miles in the bank. Yeah. And you're almost wanting to go at West Highland Way pace, are you, in those training runs? I don't even think about it. I'm just running. Yeah. The pace for my training runs for West Highland Way is no different from the pace for my training runs for the fling. Okay. And the fling times are always. I'm running a lot slower in training than I do on the day. Yeah. Which when I first ran the fling surprised me, because I assumed because you're running longer, you would just slow down. Right. But that didn't happen. Okay. So that was good.
So that must be one of your strengths then, is it, you think? That endurance to be able to maintain that pace through the fling, through the West Highland Way?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Well, I think one of my, I feel like I have a strength in the fling generally, this year aside. I feel like that I'm quite strong. Just I've got a kind of inherent strength, maybe a sort of strength endurance piece that comes into it. Yeah.
And as far as the race with the rest of the ladies' field, were you aware where you were at this point? Because I assume by the time you got to Glencoe, you were in first place, were you? Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't. In Glencoe, I was in second place. Okay. And I was aware of that. I became aware of my placing, I think, when I got to Bridge of Orchy. I was told I was in third when I got to Bridge of Orchy, and I was pretty certain of it, but not 100%. I've been told placings before, and they don't always come right. You're just thinking, who's it? All that rubbish. But then on Rannoch, I passed Morgan, and then I spied who I thought might be Jamie, a little speck in the distance, and I thought, right, if that is Jamie, and I just passed Morgan, then I must have been third. So so I knew, and by the time I got to Glencoe, it was said second, so I knew where I was then. Okay.
So what point did you get past Jamie?
The first ascent after, you know, when you go down the Devils and then you go right back up that ascent, just sort of going up that ascent. Okay. Right. I was feeling good. I wasn't feeling good when I got into Glencoe, but somewhere between there, King's House and the bottom of the Devils, I started to pick up.
Another cup of tea?
Yeah. No, I don't think I did actually at Glencoe, but I think my stop at Glencoe, my checkpoint was a bit longer. I was saying hello to somebody who'd arrived. And I wasn't really thinking about chasing down Jamie. I was just at that point. I think that came in once I went up the Devils quite quickly, and then just going around some of the switchbacks, I spotted Jamie, and she seemed particularly close. And then I thought, well, she might just have a really fast descent, and I got over the top, descended down, and then caught her as she was going up the next descent. But it was nice because I'd never met her before, and she's lovely. So we had a nice stop, and she really is. Yeah, you know, she was sort of full of the beans, and she was having a great race. It's just, you know.
And I think she finished an hour faster than her previous time. So I don't know whether she was, obviously she's trying to do the best she can. I don't know whether she was hoping to win or.
I think for her main goal was time, which I get, because I think time is all, you know, your race against yourself is always, for me, is always the number one, and then like a placing is the bonus. It's not a bad bonus to get if you don't get a good, you know, if you're not happy with your time, to get the position is great, but There's been times when I've run a great race and not been on the podium, and
it just depends a bit on who turns up, because Jamie would have won if you hadn't ran.
Yeah.
And the time that Jamie would have won in would have been a really good time. For the ladies' race. It's just that you had an exceptional race. So in a sense, she can't control what you do. She can only control what she can do.
That's it. It's all about your race on the day. And
presumably, if someone had turned up who was an hour faster than you, that wouldn't, you'd have been second. So it's in a sense, your position it depends on who's there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so getting into to Kynaston, that split took you 2 hours. Kynaston's 80 miles, and you were there 15 hours 09, and you're up to 7th place now, and you basically stay at 7th for the rest of the last few sections. So you were describing a little bit about going over Devils and getting past Jamie. And then, how did it feel getting into Kynaston?
I was fine getting into Kynaston. I find that section is always a joy to run. I mean, it's all downhill, so that's very comfortable.
And the road's been smoothed out a bit, isn't it?
It has actually, but I noticed that I'd been up on that section for the first time. I don't know, maybe a month before, or a couple of weeks before. I can't even recall exactly when I went up, and I saw that it had been smoothed out. And I thought it was a little bit disappointing, because I actually quite like it. There'd been a bit more, because I find it's runnable, technical, and the descent is just nice, so I like it. So actually, that's a bit disappointing. But
And were you in and out fairly quickly at Kynaston?
Yes, I was, because I was aware that I'd passed Jamie. So for that, my mum and my niece had actually they had joined my crew at Kynaston, and I ran in. They were delighted. But I sort of ran past, high five, and said, "Not stopping." I think I ran straight into the sports centre and back out. You never know how close anybody is behind you.
And the ones ahead of you, did you see anybody?
Yes, I did. I saw one guy a little bit in the distance, a little bit of tummy trouble, and Lara Moore. So that slowed me a little bit at the start. By the time I got to Lindava, I felt good, and that's where I kind of pushed again. There was, the guys were actually closer than I thought they had been, but they weren't really in sight very much. So.
And your section to Lundabrow that's 87 miles. You were 1 hour 37. Which is again
it's quite funny you going through the splits, even like the run into Kynaston from Glencoe. They don't mean anything to me, because even sometimes if I've been doing a run in the past, I'm trying to work out, like, if I'm going to get the bus back, how long it's going to take me, and it's guesswork. I don't pay enough attention to things like the splits.
Well, I don't think you have to. I think, I say, everyone's different, and I think the way different people approach, and what a style that suits me mightn't suit you, and you don't. If I tried to run like you do, probably wouldn't help me, and the other way around.
I completely agree with that.
So I wouldn't worry about it. It's just I just found it really interesting just to see how evenly and how well you're up there, and you were 4th fastest to Kynaston in that split. You were 6th fastest to Lundabrow. And then you were 5th fastest on the last split. It took 1:09 for that last 7 miles, which again just shows how well you were running. The fact that you were running strongly right to the end. To run that last section in 1:09, you must be running most of that.
I mean, I feel, if I'm honest, I felt when I finished that I ran the whole of the West Highland Way. Now there were sections, so I ran walked bits of Conic Hill. I walked bits in the Devils. I walked most of the Devil's Staircase. I walked the bit between Balmahan and Ardennyn, the steps, the sort of steep hill. But other than that, I can't really remember having a walking break. I think I was on the move, pretty steady the whole time. I felt when I finished that I just run the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I think to run a time under 18 hours, you can't hang around. It's that's an amazing time. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How did it feel then, getting to the end, and when you were told you were 17 hours 55?
That was nice. It was funny, because if be honest about it, I really wanted to get about 17:30. I'd like to have tipped it under 17:30. But I didn't feel like I was running that quick. Obviously, I wasn't running that quick. and I did start to wonder about what my time might be when I was descending into Fort William, and I thought, I do hope it's under 18 and a half. I didn't think...
Have you got a watch at all?
Yeah, I had my watch on, just don't look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't look at it when I'm running.
Wow.
Because I
not even then, just to get an idea?
No, because I don't want anything to distract me.
Okay.
And I sometimes think, well, what if it said, you're only 1 minute away from being under 18 hours, would you have pushed harder out? But I think I've tried to train myself to run the best I can without knowing these things. So, because the flip side of that is, I think if you happen to look at your watch and you're maybe in a going through a sort of down moment, if the time isn't what you want it to be, it might discourage you from pushing. You might give up a little bit. So I just don't. Yeah. It's just another factor to consider, and I think you've got. For me, it's enough just to keep putting one foot in front of the other without anything. Like I don't. I don't even check, the weigh-ins and stuff. I always say to my sister, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what weight I am before I start, because I don't want to think to myself, oh, gosh, am I heavier this time than I was last year? Am I heavier than I was like a month ago in training? Have I did a taper? Like I don't need any of that headaches. I just don't consider it.
It's really interesting because what you're saying. Your plan was to turn up, to run, to be flexible, to finish. It's such a simple plan, but really profound in some ways. No, it is though, in a sense of it's a simple plan, but it's taken away so much of the stress that people have. And I think of people like myself who give ourselves loads of splits and loads of things. If I'm just behind, and you start to, as you said, add on, and you're taking all that away, which is quite interesting.
I think it's definitely something I've got better at doing in the last few years, not just in running, just in like getting another year older. It's just the way that I tried to look at a lot of things.
You're fairly relaxed, are you?
I feel I'm more relaxed. I'm not sure that my husband Fraser would say that I'm relaxed, but I think
Okay. And then what about the prize giving? How did you find that this year? And getting the
so it's always nice. I mean, last year I didn't finish, but I still went up to the prize giving because it's just a nice thing to be a part of. It's a nice thing, finishing touch. I love the fact that everybody gets called up. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know anybody else that you get that kind of. And it's nice as well because there's so many runners that have travelled. So you kind of feel like you're doing this kind of advocacy piece for Scottish sport, and it's kind of like, this is how we do things, which is good. I don't think I'll get that in the CCC when I go. No goblet there.
I think as well, I've always said it's in that room everybody understands. And I think that's one of the unique things about it, because if you go into work and you say you've run it in 17 hours 8:55, I think that's amazing. But if you said 29 hours, they think that was amazing. They don't know. Whereas in that room, when you came up and it was announced that you'd run in 17:55, people knew what that meant. And I think that just gives it an extra kudos, really, because it's a heartfelt applause and a heartfelt sense of we understand what that means. Which I think makes it unique.
I never really thought of it like that. That's quite nice.
Okay, well again, congratulations. And we've got some good questions here. Some of the things that we've maybe looked at, but maybe we can pick on them as well. So Joanna Murphy wants to know, did your pacing work for you? She noticed that you had a very conservative start and a fast second half. So keen to hear about your reasons about that. Obviously we've covered that a little bit. It wasn't purely by choice, but anything to add to that one?
No, I think it just going back to the fact that it's about the flexibility bit that I mentioned in my plan. You just got to go with your feel. I run by feel, and I run by feel on my training runs. I don't look at my times. The only thing I use my watch for is if I've got to do something for a minute or 5 minutes. I'll use, or a distance. I'll use it for that. But I run by feel. Anytime when I first started training with Paul, I did have this. I became quite self-conscious about the fact that somebody would be suddenly looking at my runs. It's funny how that happens, and so I started to look at the pace, and it just threw everything off. I just like trying to. It just I wasn't hitting the mark at all, and then as you realise, well, he's going to read it anyway, so you get used to that. So I just forgot about it again and go back.
How does that work then in that coach runner relationship if you're not so bothered or not looking at your watch?
Well, that's exactly what Paul would encourage anyway. He'll tell me to do a particular session, and I'll go out and I'll do that session, and then he'll look at the results. And I think that's the best way to do it, because that's the truest way to measure where you are. There's no point in trying to, like, I probably did this a little bit at the outset, thinking, oh, I want to make sure that he realises I'm capable of running this fast, or for this long. So I probably did that a little bit, but it's pointless. You've got to just do what you're capable of, and then that way he can evaluate that and advise on what you need to do next to improve. If you're masking that in any way,
right, that's really interesting.
It's probably not the right thing to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Angela Reid was also interested in your pacing, but she also said, what would be your one main tip that you would give on the training leading up to such a race?
For me this year, the most important thing has been just self-awareness and being vigilant to, first of all, get on top of an injury and then manage that but prevent other injuries. So just being aware of your body and your heart rate and I don't mean by measuring anything, I just mean just that feel of, okay, tonight feels right, or I don't feel quite right, back off a little bit, or I've done pretty heavy sessions this week, or I know I'm going into it, maybe a little bit more flexibility, stretching work, a bit more. I've certainly done a bit more in the way of like mobility work, which I didn't focus on at all before. I think it's just that overall vigilance. Maybe it's just because I'm another year older as well, and you've got to you've got to watch. So that to me is the number one, because if you can't get that right, then you will end up either injured or fatigued and not running at your best. If you can get kind of in, without wanting to sound too hippy dippy, but in tune with your body, then I think that's probably the biggest advantage you can give yourself. Everything else, I
think it's one of the biggest things I've taken away from this chat is that ability that you've got to be able to know yourself without having to have a watch and other things. And that's a great skill. If you can understand what your body can do and when you can push and when you need to ease off, that's a great it's a great thing
I mean,
to
I
have.
think the way to do it is if you really think that your clock watch is just to take your watch off. It's really quite funny because I probably got one of the most expensive watches on the market, which I confess. I used to run with a little Casio, but it used to run out every time it got to 60 minutes. And the first time I used it in a marathon, I had this panic attack thinking, I just was going through a bit of a lull thinking, is that 4 hours? And then I thought, it could be 5.
every hour it just started again.
And then I went to a slightly better one, and now I've got the best watch ever, and I don't really, I do use it, I just don't tend to use it for pace and stuff at the time. It's good to look back on.
Okay, John Cassidy wants to know, what's your hydration nutrition plan? How was your Friday before the race? What did you do?
So the hydration nutrition plan was take a car full of food, enough to supply a small army, try one bite, discard it, and then switch to gels. Was pretty much, to be honest with you, I said I did this talk for a fling weekend, and I said that I was thinking about doing the full West Highland Way on gels, and there was a couple of audible gas, and I was slightly self-conscious about saying it. So I think yet again I was trying to do what sounded right on paper by going for the real food option, whereas in the back of my head I was probably thinking I'm doing this on gels, and in the end I did do it on gels.
And you had enough to do in that carload of
stuff? I did have enough. I took plenty, and the thing that really annoyed me is we never got a track of how many I took. So that means that the next time I'm doing a long race, I'm going to have to start the calculation again, because I don't know how many gels I went through.
So is that something you would actually plan to do next time?
Yeah, I think the other option would be maybe have some real food options, but don't really get into them until later. I think having a couple of spoons of rice pudding, like literally it was a couple of spoons at a couple of stops, maybe would be fine later on in the race. I think it's maybe just that initial section during the night. But then the problem then is if you don't have any food in your stomach for all those hours, your stomach shrinks.
Yeah.
Then it gets harder to take anything solid on.
Yeah.
So.
And do you think the fact that the West Highland Way does start at 1 o'clock didn't suit you? Whereas if you started a race at, say, 7 in the morning, then
if I started that at 7 in the morning, I could take a lot of time off that, I'm pretty certain.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I do. I think I think the vast bulk of runners would significantly reduce their time if they weren't starting. Because unless you're doing night shift and you're training for that, you're asking your body to do something that's...
And it's the fact that you've been awake for the whole of Friday, even though you try and doze, don't you? But you don't get a proper sleep, do you?
And even if you slept the whole of Friday, it's a bit like the whole thing with jet lag. All your various different cycles and rhythms in your body are like. I think digestion takes 2 weeks before it changes. So when you come back with jet lagged holidays, that's why you can feel a bit off for such a length of time. So it's inevitable that on the very first day it's not going to be good.
Yeah. So John was asking about the Friday of the race. What did you do? Did you have a day off and did you try and sleep?
I did take the day off this year, whereas last year or the year before, I can't remember, I ended up working. And I think I got up, I was up probably about 7 o'clock in the morning and then did a few things and then
packed all your food.
Well, I was pretty organised actually. That everything was ready. I just had I think I made some wraps on the Friday morning. Didn't eat a single one of them, but there was enough there in case I wanted to eat them for a 20-hour period.
I'm sure your team enjoyed them.
And then I went to bed about 1, and I pretty much lay horizontal until about 7 p.m. Yeah. But I read, I wasn't sleeping. It was nice.
But you rested.
Exactly, and that was pretty good. And then my sister arrived. We had dinner. We went up to registration, and then I had Scott, Nicole, and Karen came back after registration, and we all went for various.
Yeah, it's quite nice being so close, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that feel strange? Because having done registration and then come home again.
Well, I don't know any different.
No, that's true.
I don't know any different. It's just going up, but I guess it's quite fortunate. But then I don't sleep. I mean, I lay down for a little while and then just got back up and pottered. I must admit though, Karen Wallace and Scott Nicol can sleep like that. I had to knock on that door to get them up after 11 o'clock. Wow. They were out for the count. Wow. Yeah, so Scott was rested.
That's impressive. Yeah. Key question from Kenny McManus. He wants to know: was your first step left or right?
No idea.
No idea. I didn't think you know. Thomas Gray, any plans for the Devil this year? Will you be back next year to do the West Highland Way?
I am doing the Devil. I must admit, I really hadn't thought about the proximity of the Devil to the CCC. It's already close enough to the West Highland Way, but I was aware of that. I had really hoped to do the Devil because I know I've had some good results at the Devil in terms of placings, but I've never felt like I towed that line being race fit.
Yeah.
So I know that I've got a lot better time in me, and I thought maybe that would be this year. However, it's I think what's going to happen is I don't think there's going to be a taper, maybe a few days before, but the weekend before is going to be heavy mileage, so
building up to CCC.
Yeah, I'm thinking I might actually go out I'm toying with the idea of a trip out to the Alps, and that would be the weekend before the Devils, but then so be it. It should be nice. I bumped into Nicola Duncan out. She was doing a training run on the section before the West Highland Way. I think she'll have a really good race, and she's a nice girl, somebody that I just met from the fling. So I think Rachel Norman's doing it as well. So it's going to be a nice group of people that, So I don't necessarily think it's going to be well timed, but I'd be glad to run against these girls again. So that's good.
And you will race it?
I just couldn't not race it.
That's part of who you are, is it?
It is. I'll make no bones about it. It's I race because of competition.
How many weeks have you got between the Devils and the CCC?
I think about another 4. It must be.
Okay.
No, maybe not even that, because I think the CCC is like the 23rd or 25th.
Yeah, and there's the 4th.
Yes, but it's 3 in a bit.
So
it might only be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's even worse. Yeah, I need to check. 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not so much the recovery from the Devils, it's more the fact that when I'm running the Devils, I should be doing something a bit hillier that weekend as a final mileage for the CCC. It's not the best prep.
Yeah. Well, you can always do Ben Nevis afterwards if you want.
Somebody else said that actually.
Well, David was telling me the other guy came second. Him and his team went up Ben Nevis at 4 a.m. after the race.
Wow.
And then they went up and down and got to the prize giving.
That's magic.
I know.
Crazy.
Yeah. Ken Baxter, comparing her training to us mortals, what did you get wrong?
What did they get wrong? What did we get wrong? Yes.
Oh, what do we? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Well, you read that properly there.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I think it goes back to you just got to train for what suits you and run for what suits you. And be reasonable in your expectations and your goals.
I would think, again, just chatting to you tonight, I would say one of the things that you do well is be true to yourself. And I think a lot of us, it's very easy, especially these days with so much on social media and Strava and the rest, to be comparing yourself all the time and trying to do other people's sessions, whereas I get the impression from you don't worry about that. You're not on Facebook and you're not looking at what others are doing.
I definitely have been guilty of it in the past. Not on social media, but that's maybe even worse because then you're not fully aware of what everybody's doing. I actually think not having a good fling race this year was probably quite good for me because it took a little bit of pressure off. In the past, I've really pressured myself. I mean, it sounds daft because nobody really cares whether I'm going to turn up to a race and where I'm going to place, but that's not necessarily how you look at it. You kind of think, I won that last year or I placed here and therefore I've got to meet some kind of expectation. The only person that's got that expectation is you. And nobody really gives a monkey's what you're doing. They're thinking about their own race, but so I took a bit of pressure off myself. So I went into the West Highland Way very relaxed. Had I had a good run at the fling and won the fling, I don't know that I would have been as relaxed going into West Highland Way because there would have been that expectation of somebody thinking, well, she's probably should win this because she ran that time in the fling. So that wasn't there.
And you felt the pressure was off you a little bit.
Yeah.
Great. Derek Fish, what has been your post-race recovery and have you ran much since the race?
Post-race recovery was a week off, just apart from Friday. I think I did 4 miles really easy on the Friday. That was the first thing that I did. And then I had a weekend doing some grade 2, then some grade 3 and some easy rock climbing.
All right.
Saturday and Sunday, all at a nice even pace.
Is that another interest of yours, is it?
No, it's one that's probably developed or is developing. I've read an awful lot more about climbing than I have actually done any climbing. I've read a lot about climbing actually in the last couple of years and it's definitely intrigues me. And it was good. I had some vouchers for a Glenmore course and the thing is nobody else turned up, so I got one-on-one tuition for a day using ropes and stuff and doing a bit of abseiling, so that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
And you'll do more of that, do you think?
Yeah. I liked it.
Amanda Hamilton, which section of the race did you most enjoy and any bits you found mentally or physically challenging, and at what point did you believe you had the win in the bag?
So probably covered the middle bit about the challenging pieces. That would sort of start. The section of the race that I enjoyed the most at the time was the finish. And like everybody, retrospectively, it was every last minute of it to anybody that would listen.
That's right.
And the win in the bag, probably when I hit the tarmac in Fort William.
Seriously? You thought she still could be coming up?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You've no idea.
You got no idea, have you? That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. I felt I was running quite well, but
she went through a good patch, and
you've just no idea. I mean, Jamie ran a great race, so who knows?
Yeah. Oh well done. Jason Taylor. Everyone has a dark patch in their race. When was Nicola's, and what did you do to get her head back in the game?
So there's probably a few dark patches. I guess the only bit I would really say was a proper dark patch was the early hours in the run into Rowerdennan. But it wasn't, in hindsight, that bad. My head was never out of the game. It was in the game from the start until the finish. Right. So I didn't have the issue of trying to get it in and out.
Okay,
just get it in, leave it in, get to the line, preferably in front of the others.
And you're pretty focused on in a race like that, are you?
Yeah. Yeah. I lost focus last year when I DNF'd. I won't do that again.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally, I am focused.
Yeah. Well done. Joanna Murphy wants to know how you have such amazing calf muscles. Calf envy, it says.
It's just how genetics. It's just how I had. I can tell you that I didn't really respect my calf muscles too much when I was growing up. I think, like a lot of girls, you want to be a little bit smaller and petiter than you actually are. Now I'm pretty happy with them. They do a good job.
Yeah. Good. Nicola Dunn, congratulations on the win. Do you do much cross training? And if so, what works best for you?
I don't really do a lot of cross training. I do the odd cycle. My husband's a keen cyclist, so I do the odd bike ride with him. But it really is the odd bike ride. We usually have maybe 1 week a year where we go on a cycling holiday. For that whole week I'll cycle, and quite often don't do any running. I always intend to do a bit more cycling, and maybe now I'll do a bit more climbing, hopefully.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, Ross Beveridge, congratulations on the win. And it's asking, when are you able to run? Sorry, how are you able to run so consistently fast over such a long distance? What training do you do to help with speed?
I don't think it's anything to do with speed over the long distance. I think that's endurance and strength. But I do some interval sessions. But I think in terms of ultra, I think they just help keep your fitness sharper. I don't really think they have any bearing on the speed at which you're doing the ultra, because you're not really ever going that fast. They probably wouldn't even have much bearing on doing the speed at which you run a road marathon. I think they just keep your sharpness up.
Okay.
I think the thing that gets you fast consistently in an ultra is strength and endurance.
And not just the running side, but the...
No, I get most of my strength from running. I really don't do anything. Like, I don't do any gym work, I probably should do gym work. And Paul might listen to this, so there are some mobility sessions that mention kettlebells, but I don't own a kettlebell. I'll get a kettlebell, Paul, if you're listening. I probably should do some more on that. But I do think that if you're doing off-road and hilly terrain, there's a good bit of strength and resistance that you get in that.
Yeah. Have you got an idea of how many miles you run, or is that something again that you don't bother with?
Oh, that's so funny, actually. That's come up a couple of times in conversation, and I will say this, and I genuinely mean this. I have absolutely no idea how many miles a week I run. Right. And that has been the case since I started training with Paul. Because previously... Oh yeah, he'll have a log of everything I do.
Yeah.
But what happens? What I used to do is I used to keep all my runs on an Excel sheet, so you can't not see the number.
Yeah.
And I used to try and push that number up. And if I go back and look over my training diaries to the point at which I ended up injured, it is just progressively just adding and adding and adding and adding and adding, and you wonder, well, at some point that's going to pop. Now I don't keep that. Everything goes. I upload a watch. It goes to Paul. That's it. I don't look. I'd have to go in, and I could do it. I'd have to go into Training Peaks, which I don't spend any time in other than looking at the start of the week to see what I've got to do. I'd have to go into Training Peaks and then manually add up. There might even be something in there that tells you a total. I don't know. I'm not very into the whole tech side of stuff. And add it up. I don't do it. Yeah. I don't see the point.
No.
It goes back to you just you know yourself if there's a heavier week than others. Probably because I've got structured sessions, and some of them are quite short, and so be it. That's what it is. I don't really.
And you don't question it. You just do it.
I do question it. I have questioned it, but I'm questioning it less.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that. But yeah, because you've got to just.
I suppose you've got to trust the coach that you're employing them and you're asking them to help you, and you've either got to trust them or not, haven't you? It's no use, I suppose, asking their help and then saying, right, well, I'm going to add them 2 more runs because I don't think this is enough.
Yeah, and I think you've got to understand what your expectations are going into a coach. I don't think you go. You don't think you take up. You don't join a club or you don't join a coach thinking, okay, I'm going to go from where I am today to become some kind of Olympian. I think if you're already doing a lot of running and a lot of training, the margin that you might gain extra isn't going to be the same as somebody who's just joining from the first time.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about that incremental improvement if it exists, but also being able to run for a longer period without injury and just feel better when I'm running generally. So it's working for all of those reasons.
Yeah. Excellent. And then Marina McCallum wants to know, what was your strategy going into checkpoints? Did you take time, or did your support crew have it down to a fine art and you were in and out quickly?
It depends on the checkpoint. Again, it's just by feel. I'll make it. So I thought perhaps what I would do is arrive at a checkpoint, tell somebody what I wanted, and then keep walking through. And that sometimes happened. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I just wanted to stop for a couple of minutes. It just depends. It depends on the race. Like Balmaha and the Fling, a couple of people commented on a really quick checkpoint there, but I don't really class that as a checkpoint because I don't really need to stop. So I kind of grab a bottle of water and just keep going. But it'll be different when I get to Benglass, for example. I want a bit of a breather.
Excellent. And then just to finish, I'll just get your thoughts on the rest of the year. Obviously, you're saying you're doing the CCCs, so that's one of the UTMB races, isn't it, in Mont Blanc? And so that would be the first time you've raced out of Scotland, really, isn't it, as far as I can see, ultra-wise?
Yeah, I did a race last year in Argentière, just outside Chamonix. That was just a last minute. In fact, I wasn't planned to do it. I was there for a long weekend with my husband, not doing any running. In fact, he signed me up for it while we were there. I think he speaks French. He just wanted to chat to somebody. I don't speak French. Before I knew it, I was running in the race. And it was effectively run up that hill, big hill, come down the other side and then run up the next one, come down. It was like a large hill race. But that was good. And I got a third. So it was fun. And that's why I thought, right, CCC. I enjoyed the terrain.
So thinking about the years to come, have you got a bucket load of races you'd like to do, or what have you thought about next year?
Yeah, I'd like to probably try and squeeze in a road marathon again this year. I would like to get back to doing some 10Ks and half marathons on the road because I enjoy the club atmosphere and running the road races as well. But my Achilles last year kept me off the speedy stuff. I've always fancied the Larry Grew hill race and a couple other hill races. Ben Nevis is maybe there for a year as well. There's a few other hill races. It's not all just the longer stuff. It's a bit of a mix. And I'll see how the CCC goes. I've got a question mark over it. I typically don't like really big events, but I figure I've got to go and have a shot and see. I might fall in love with that whole atmosphere and want to do more. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we wish you all the best, and we look forward to following what happens in the next years to come. And obviously, we'd love to see you back at the West Highland Way next year if that fitted in with your plans. And again, just a massive congratulations for this year. It was just, I say, it was great to see how well you did, and the way the time you took off from 2 years ago and winning the race and that time. I've forgotten, did Ian say there was how many people had been under 18 hours? I should have checked. Four. It just shows you out of all the years that we've been running it. So
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And wish you all the best for the Devils and the CCC.
Thank you. Right.